All right, what if I told you there's this corner of the internet and it's absolutely blowing up? A place where you can put down real money on pretty much anything you can think of? And when I say anything, I mean anything.
From the really big questions, like, are we actually alone in the universe? All the way down to stuff that's, let's be honest, a little more trivial, like what's going to happen with the biggest names in pop culture. And then there's this. I am not kidding you. People are betting on whether Jesus Christ will return. Yes, real hard cash is being wagered on the second coming. This is a thing that is actually happening right now. So you can see how this whole thing has just exploded, right? It's gone from a weird little internet hobby to a multi-billion-dollar industry. And that makes us ask a really big question. What happens when you can put a price tag on, well, everything? Okay, to get our heads around this, we gotta pop the hood and see how these things work. Because the people who love these platforms, they don't call them gambling sites. Oh no, they call them truth machines. So what's the deal? How does it even work? Well, try to think of it less like a Vegas casino and more like a stock market, but for the future. You buy yes or no shares in something happening. The price of that share, which is always going to be somewhere between 1 and 99 cents, is basically the odds. So if a yes share for an event costs 70 cents, that means the crowd thinks there's a 70% chance it's going to happen. Simple as that. And here's the kicker. Their whole business model is completely different. When you gamble traditionally, you're playing against the house, right? And the house always wants you to lose. But here, you're betting against other people. The platform itself, it just plays matchmaker, connects a buyer and a seller, and takes a tiny little fee, kind of like a stock exchange. And that's their whole argument. They'll tell you they're not a casino trying to take your money, they're just a neutral place for information to get sorted out. The huge idea propping this all up is something called the wisdom of the crowds. The theory is pretty simple. If you get enough smart people all putting their money where their mouth is, their combined bets will create a prediction that's way more accurate than any single expert or poll could ever be. The market, at least in theory, cuts through all the BS and just finds the truth. But, that brings us right to the heart of the debate. Are these things really sophisticated financial tools for finding the truth? Or are they just casinos wearing a fancy suit and using a lot of Wall Street buzzwords? So are they truth machines? Well, let's look at the data, because it tells a slightly different story. For all the high-minded talk about predicting elections or the next big scientific discovery, just look at where the actual money is going. On Kalshi, which is the biggest platform here in the US, a whopping 79% of all the action is on sports. For most people using it, this doesn't feel like some revolutionary truth machine. It feels exactly like a sports book. And their marketing? Oh, it's not subtle. During March Madness, the CEO of Kalshi himself tweeted this out. 90 minutes left to attempt generational wealth. Now you tell me, does that sound like a serious financial instrument for discovering truth? Or does that sound an awful lot like someone selling you a lottery ticket? And yeah, the states are definitely starting to notice. See, by getting regulated at the federal level as a commodities exchange, these platforms found a really clever way to dance around state gambling laws and, maybe more importantly, state taxes. And that has kicked off a massive legal battle. We've got multiple states suing them, basically saying, hey, you're not a prediction market, you're just an illegal sports book trying to get out of paying your fair share. But this whole fight isn't just about taxes. It gets much, much deeper than that. Because when you create a market where you can bet on literally anything, well, you're eventually going to wander into some really uncomfortable, ethically murky water. And this is where things get truly weird. Okay, in the stock market, insider trading is a huge no-no. It's illegal. But in one of these truth machines, you could actually argue that it's a feature, not a bug. Think about it. To get the most accurate odds, the market kind of needs people with inside information to place their bets. The system almost encourages it. And that just completely smudges the line between having good information and, cheating. And this is where that whole wisdom of the crowds theory runs smack into a very dark wall. I mean, should you really be able to make a profit by betting on a war? Here in the US, regulators have tried to draw some clear lines in the sand. They've banned bets on things like war and assassinations. But international platforms like Polymarket, they're playing by a different set of rules. They have active markets on actual military conflicts. And this leads to probably the most disturbing thing to come out of all this, what people are calling death contracts. We're talking about people literally betting on whether a specific individual will be alive or dead by a certain date. So, with all this talk about democratizing finance and letting you monetize what you know, Who's actually winning? Who is making money on these things? Well, the numbers are pretty grim, honestly. A deep dive into the data from Polymarket showed that a staggering 84% of users have lost money. That dream of getting rich quick, it's just not the reality for most. The vast majority of people are just providing the liquidity, which is a fancy way of saying they're the ones putting money into the pot that the winners take home. And this chart right here really shows you who those winners are. This is not a level playing field. It turns out a tiny, tiny fraction of traders, we're talking the top 0.04%, are taking home almost all of the profits. Seriously, imagine a poker game with 1,000 players, and just one person at the table walks away with nearly everything. That's what we're looking at. It's a system with a few sharks and a whole lot of fish.
We gotta remember, behind all of these stats are real people. This quote from a user on a Kalshi subreddit kind of hits home. It shows the real human cost. People get lured in by this promise of a fast payout, especially when times are tough, and a lot of them end up losing money that they really, really couldn't afford to lose. And that's really where this whole thing leaves us. These platforms aren't just truth machines. In practice, they look a lot more like highly effective casinos. They raise some genuinely chilling ethical questions, and they seem to make a very small number of people rich at the expense of almost everyone else. So it forces us to ask one last really important question. When we finally manage to put a price tag on literally everything, what have we lost that was never supposed to be for sale in the first place?